Sure.
I can't believe Thanksgiving is next week.
I know.
I'm not emotionally
When did In
prepared.
Lieu of Fun just, maybe this is just, oh, we're live. It is Friday, November 19th. Oh, we're a minute early. Ben, the
That's
Blue Go
very
Live.
Chevy Chase of you.
What?
You know, to like not notice that we'd gone live and then like, oh, sorry.
Yes, I know. Like that's well, that's like my whole aesthetic, except less creepy than Chevy Chase. It is Friday, November 19th, 4:59 p.m. We are a minute before 5 o'clock. We've started the show early. And I had a Chevy Chase moment of not realizing going live because the blue go live button likes me so much these days, Ben, that it just immediately goes live. It's just there waiting for me when I go over to YouTube and then it goes live. I know. It is kind of a
Day?
it was a day. Oh, it's
Month?
cheese day.
Year?
I said that already. I said the Friday, November 19th.
I don't.
Yeah.
You did? Oh, okay. Sorry. My bad.
Then,
it's cheese night, guys. But I already ate all my cheese.
It's cheese night. I've like barely eaten anything because I've just been working and in this hole. So I'm not going to be very great company today, I feel like. But we have to talk about what we're doing for Thanksgiving because as GDF was just mentioning, and I'm traveling, so that's going to be a little bit difficult. Do we want to just take the week off? Ben?
Well, I think we should have a poll.
Oh, Mike's coming on.
Yay!
Great.
Oh, good. So when are you traveling, KK?
Monday, and then like Friday. So two different. Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe we should just take the week off. Do we have anything scheduled for next week?
No, that's the other reason. I kind of. I just also like. I have to be honest. Like I have to finish a bunch of work. What'd you say?
It would be like revolutionary. We've never taken a week off. That would be kind of like revolutionary.
I think it would be healthy. I feel like we've been kind of strung out. Genevieve had a whole baby. Scott has been teaching in person. Yeah, ooh, I know.
Too Solomon. That would be weird. Way too Solomon.
Yeah.
Scott is currently on a train.
Yeah, Scott's been traveling back and forth. He's been I just
want to point out that saying that Genevieve has had a whole baby implies that often people have half babies or
but I meant it like in like it's a whole like that's a whole thing. Like it's like a whole thing. Like she's like that's how I meant it. But yes.
It keeps going. It's like you think it's done and then it just keeps going.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how babies work like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know? There's no return policy.
All right, I think let's see. So far 42%,
but then we can also take the week to like
39% is voting against giving us the week off. I just want to point out.
I might overrule. I mean, here's the other thing is like I feel like we have been.
Are you?
We've been like not struggling, but like a little bit out of pocket lately to get guests. I have a feeling that the lockdown is going. I have a feeling that people are going to start.
You're breaking up, Kate. Is
really?
Anybody else?
I can hear her.
Oh, really? Maybe it's my end.
Yeah. Anyways, like I have a feeling that we're about to go through another surge and people are going to be around more. I kind of just think that maybe it's a good idea to like get a bunch of people in the queue for December and plan it out. And then we can do that next week and take next week to plan some stuff.
I think we also need to bring back Pugilism Week.
Sure.
It's been a while since we've had Pugilism Week.
And life has been too peaceful.
There has not been enough conflict. We need Scott versus Rick Grinnell.
That's never going to happen. Nor should it. I mean, like, I feel like Scott is actually quite nervous that he crosses like a line. Like he won't admit this, but I think that he actually sometimes is actually nervous that he like goes over the line with some of his Twitter persona. And antagon. There was
He's
one
never
person.
crossed the line.
No, I mean, I don't know. I think he's pretty safe, but is Mike Chase here yet? Oh, there he is. Great. Our resident defense attorney.
All right. Yeah,
this is so convenient.
But we should ask which week we should bring back. Should we bring back pugilism week or cooking?
Yeah,
week?
We could have a nice reward at for giving us the week off. We can have designed a very good week back.
It's Mike Chase.
Yo,
hey,
how's it going? How's
so glad that you were free. We're all hanging out.
You know, free is a spectrum. We all fall on some place. You know, I can cancel everything for you guys.
You're less free than Kyle Rittenhouse.
I am less free. I'm equally free. I think I'm equally.
Yeah,
No, because you have appointments and shit, and you have clients, and he's gotten rid of all that.
Well, you saw the Onion. You saw the Onion article, right? The Onion article said that Kyle's been sentenced to 45 years of CPAC conferences. I don't know if you saw that.
That's really perfect. Is that true? That's so terrible. Oh my God.
So, Mike, I have a really important ground rule question for you about Kyle Rittenhouse, which is:
sure,
is the definition of heroism in our society equivalent to acquittal?
Oh God! I mean, this is right. This is the whole David French thing, right? Like David French wrote this article about it, and said no matter what happens, Kyle Rittenhouse is not a hero. Like, juries don't decide whether you're a hero or not.
Sorry, I love David French, but that's not that great.
I wanna take the other side. I think beyond convincing 12 jurors that you are not. That the government hasn't proven all the elements of the offense beyond a reasonable doubt, using only admissible evidence, that's heroic. I think that's the definition of heroism in our society, is not guilty.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to a criminal defense lawyer, so where I'm going to come down on this. I actually, in one area of my life, I'm a purist. Actually, two areas, I'm a purist, right? Get drunk every weekend, purist on that, completely. You got to do that. But no, not really. But the other area where I'm a purist is I think what happens in the criminal trial courtroom matters. I get the point that you're making, completely. This dude is not a hero. He dramatically effed up. The whole reason that this criminal trial exists is because there is just a disaster, a total disaster.
Are we not am I fallen down a well and found myself on Fox News or something? What is happening here that the talking points that we're entertaining at this moment is Kyle Rittenhouse a hero? Come on, this is absolutely
GDF.
This is people are going to Free Beacon is going to be right here, and they're going to be clipping this and putting it on
It's a long con. It's a long con by Ben. He's got a punchline. Let's GDF, wait for it. Okay, he's working on something here.
You've had criminal procedure more recently than any of the rest of us.
I've not taken criminal procedure yet.
Oh, you haven't taken criminal again. Well, we're going to pretend you have.
All right, we'll go with it.
Didn't they teach you that the difference between heroism and acquittal approaches zero as the profile of the trial goes up?
I would say that depends on your news source.
Because, where I'm from, if you're a nobody and you're convicted and you're acquitted, you can still be a scumbag. But if you're famous enough and if the news sources are obsessed with you enough and you're acquitted, then you get to pump your fist in the air like Josh Hawley, and you're that's the definition of manliness.
Are you forgetting O.J. Simpson? Or I don't know, a number of people that definitely did not become heroes.
That was before Genevieve.
That was the 90s. That was before. That was before criminal procedure.
I existed during the 90s. I fully existed during the 90s.
Oh my
Right, but
God.
it was before Paula was born.
Yes.
But Mike Chase
BP.
was barely alive then.
I'm barely alive now, Ben. I'm barely alive right now.
I will say one of the surreal things I've ever seen in terms of like heroism and like guilt was O.J. Simpson commenting on Carol Baskin and her innocence or lack thereof in his mind. That was curious.
I want to have a moment to let. I have watched, my closest I've gotten to following the Rittenhouse trial has been my occasional foray out of my mentions into my main Twitter stream to look at news. And mostly I have seen Mike Chase just like doing an impersonation of an angry attorney watching idiots talk about something that they know more about than like
a very good impersonation.
Like, I know that you're not really that judgmental of all of humanity's understanding of basic criminal procedure and trial acumen and evidence. But were there actually any glaring errors that glaring appealable errors that like are going to, that are going to surface?
Not now. No, not now. I mean, we've got an acquittal across the board. There's no appeal. Period. It's done. It's over.
Yeah.
He's
that whole double jeopardy thing.
Yeah, he's acquitted. I know. Yeah, he's acquitted. It's over. However, had he been convicted on even one count?
Yes, that's
right?
kind of what I mean.
Right. It's a good question, right? So for sure. I mean, look, the state, people say, oh, they're making much of this. Look, the state's commentary on post-arrest silence should never be tolerated. Like, ever, right? It's the whole reason Miranda exists, is that you have this prophylactic warning, right? This is like basic crim pro stuff. Why do police have to warn you? Because that right is so fundamental. Your right to attorney, your right to remain silent, so fundamental that in fact the Supreme Court has said, look, if you're a police officer and you're about to engage in a custodial interview, you need to warn the person that they have those rights, okay? Post-arrest silence, right? Invoking that right, so critical. Prosecutors cannot tell a jury that it's indicative of guilt, period, full stop. There's no question. It's not even a close case that that's what the lead prosecutor in this case did. So certainly that alone would have been, and it was objected to promptly. It was an adequate record was made. That alone is such a grievous error, right? Look, as
Miranda
defense
violation.
attorneys. Yeah, well, it wasn't a Miranda violation, but it's
its own violation.
Right, it's settled. It's like settled Supreme Court precedent. Look, as defense lawyers, we get into trouble. There's this thing called the golden rule. I can't tell a jury. I am not allowed to tell a jury in my closing, put yourself in my client's shoes. It is known that is so fundamental, that's so impactful on juries that they just say you're not allowed to do it, right? And so I think at the end of the day,
with the defendant. Imagine you were going to jail. Would you vote to put yourself in jail?
Let's watch it through his eyes, right? I mean, there's ways around it, but at the end of the day, now Mark Richards, when you watch this press conference at the end of the trial today, I thought it was actually sort of remarkable, right? Because he is just he is not a political figure. Mark Richards is a criminal defense lawyer. Period. That is what he is. And he said on the courtroom steps, he said, "Look, I've tried cases with this attorney Binger before, and what justice is justice is supposed to seek truth. And this, when it's not about truth, it's a problem, and it's not about winning, it's about truth. And this became about winning. And I think that really was the problem here, is that the prosecutors sometimes, even if they can make a nice, tidy case of guilt, they get so obsessed with winning that they do improper things. So I think the post-arrest silence comment, that would have been a real problem. I actually disagree. There's this hubbub about this video and all this kind of stuff. I've seen very egregious Brady violations at trial.
I was just going to say that didn't strike me as
no. And the judge, look, getting a compressed video, or the prosecutor going, "Oh, whoops, I thought I gave you the right one." Judges always, they look at that and they go, "Well, I don't think it really affected anything, so goodbye." Now, the internet made a huge deal of it, but the post-arrest silence comment was a big deal. Yeah, that was a big deal.
All right.
What's happened since? Have there been what's going on right now?
So mostly, I mean, it's just going to be getting dark now. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully people stay calm. I don't know that they necessarily will. But I guess we'll see. Right. I mean, so far it's not been crazy. The footage that I've seen, at least from Kenosha, has been relatively calm. So we'll see as the night progresses. Hopefully people can have some peace there. And if there are reforms to be made, hopefully they'll do it in the ordinary course, you know? So.
Yeah.
GDF? I have a different question for you about defense lawyer comments, which is, what did you make of Mr. Chansley, a.k.a. Mr. Shaman? I guess his first name is QAnon and last name is Shaman, but Mr. Shaman has a lawyer who made some interesting comments about a hypothetical conversation he would like to have with Donald Trump. I'm curious what you made of them.
So I thought he was very eloquent in his remarks. I think judicious use of the F-bomb is overrated. I think liberal use of the F-bomb is wonderful. That guy, so I know he was talking about getting a beer with Trump. I would like to get a beer with him because I think that guy's got some stories to tell. Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is essentially his comment was, I'd like to have a conversation over a beer. I know he doesn't drink, but I would be having a beer. And if I was having a beer with Trump, what I would tell him is that he's got to clean some of this shit up because of what all these people who've gotten into this soup because of his comments. I think I actually thought it was a fairly nice position for a criminal defense lawyer to take.
Well, wait a minute. I think he said, I would like to talk to Mr. Trump about him cleaning some of this shit up because of the fucking jackasses who've gotten into trouble.
That might be better.
He called his client. He called his client a jackass.
I think that's okay. I think that's all right.
Which is actually has the benefit of being true. But
there are times
if my lawyer called me a jackass in public, I would be upset.
Yeah, except no, because there are some because there are times that you go before a sentencing judge sometimes and you say, Judge, I'm going to be candid with you. My client is kind of an idiot. And you have to sentence him proportional to his idiocy because, like, he's not like a genius who should have known better. Like, my guy wears horns and furs. Right, exactly. Like sentence him on the scale of like what he is, right? Like this was him doing the best he could do, right? And so, like, you know, I'm not saying that would be the best argument in this case, but no, this lawyer I think look, he got his client to a plea, which I think is an interesting thing with a client such as this client. The fact that a guy who went into the Capitol wearing furs and face paint and horns did not take a case all the way to a jury trial is remarkable to me, right? So there's something about this lawyer that was a little bit magical, and I think it was brass tacks. Look,
God, that is such a great point.
I prefer trials because I think in a lot of cases they matter. But in this case, you know, I think it was really remarkable that this lawyer was able to get to a place where he was at a sentencing without a trial. So that was interesting. So I think the sentence was too much personally, but that's again speaking in an aggregate and based on U.S. Sentencing Commission data, et cetera. What I know about recidivism, I know people have strong feelings about the case and the matter, but you know, at the end of the day, I thought the lawyer's remarks were really refreshing and actually enjoyable to watch.
Now, I want to ask you a few more questions about Mr. Chansley and the disposition of his case.
Sure.
Is dressing like this, and I want to say he, like, as the person who wears dog shirts, I think going into the Capitol dressed as a goat is pretty awesome. I can't decide if in the context of a criminal case it's an aggravating factor or a mitigating factor. And so I think we can all agree that it's awesome, but I'm curious, like, what you make.
I'm renewing my objection that this is going to be put on OAN and like that, like there's like, you are just like, I don't know what's going on over there and how much bourbon you've had, Ben, but like now we're like, you're just like, yeah, rah shaman.
No. I'm trying to think about it. I'm actually being totally serious. I think it's an interesting question whether him going in this way plays as a mitigating factor or an aggravating factor in sentencing. And so I'm just interested in your expertise on that question.
Well, I will tell you that under the United States sentencing guidelines, there is a mitigating factor
Can
called...
we take this fool down? I don't want to keep staring at this.
Oh, no, Ben, I think she meant me. I think she meant she wants Chansley back up.
No, I'm captaining the show, so I could get rid of you at any time. I could. Just watch it.
There's a sentencing provision called diminished capacity. And, it's not guilty by reason of insanity, right? It's like that's a very narrow, different kind of a thing, and it's not a defense, but it is a mitigating factor where if you can bring evidence, right, that says that your client has diminished capacity, I'd be shocked. I mean, maybe it was just like this
horns in the Capitol.
I don't know. I'd be surprised.
Is it evidence of diminished capacity?
I would think so. I think there's something going on. I mean, there's got to be, right?
You need your client's permission to plead diminished capacity, and you need your client's permission to plead insanity or any type of mental defense. And here's a crazy thing: is that crazy people don't like to admit they're crazy.
A lot of times they don't.
But
guilty people also
don't get them off.
But guilty people also don't like to admit that they're guilty in a lot of cases as well. So, who knows what could have happened in this case? I mean,
and all people don't want to go to jail.
Yeah, that's true. Most people are very they're very averse to going to jail. But look, I mean, with Chansley, I don't know all the circumstances, but I will just say, he was a unique character, and if I'm a judge and I'm looking at him, I'm going to say this guy's not normal, but he also didn't take the sovereign citizen route. And I think that there should be actually a sentencing credit for that. For wow, you came in here painted with horns and you didn't contest jurisdiction because there's a gold fringe on my flag. That's remarkable. Here's
all right.
Here's
so
48
one
months.
One more Chansley question, and then I will turn it over to GDF. He gets 41. Oh, sorry, to Kate.
No, you go first.
He gets 41 months following a plea. 41 months is the low end of the guideline sentence. Jokes aside and his lawyer's flamboyant comments aside, did his lawyer do him a service here? Is this an example of good representation limiting the bad impacts of somebody's behavior? He's going to spend 3.5 years in prison, then he probably won't serve all of it, and then he's free to get his life together. Is that a win for him, or is this a situation where better lawyering gets him a better deal?
See, it was interesting. Royce Lamberth sentenced him, right? And so, one of the first federal
district... By the way, Royce is a judge who does not tolerate bullshit.
No, and one of the first... Actually, I think the first district court judge I ever met in person was Royce Lamberth, okay? So I was at DOJ for a summer in D.C. With the prosecutor that I worked with extensively walked me over to the courthouse, and I got to meet with Judge Lamberth in chambers. I found him very delightful, but he doesn't suffer fools at all. He's been on the bench a long, long time. He's gotten extremely comfortable saying things that he wants to say. And in this case, he said on the record, I think you did the right thing, because if you went to trial, more or less, I'm paraphrasing here, I would have slammed you if you went to trial, which that's causing ripples in a whole bunch of criminal justice reform corners, as it should, right? Which is this trial tax issue. Was it a good representation? I don't, it being a guideline sentence, it is presumptively reasonable on appeal, right? The presumption on appeal is that if it was within the guidelines range, the appeals court is going to look at it and say it's presumptively reasonable. So that's the defense counsel is up against that presumption anyway. The judge knows he can slam him. Plus, the judge knows that there's a huge amount of attention around this case, that people are not going to want to see leniency here just because of the optics of it and all that kind of stuff and what it represents. So I don't think this defense lawyer probably could have done much better. I'll be honest with you. I don't think he could have done much better. I will say, had this not been the U.S. Capitol, had this not been these circumstances, had the conduct been breaking and entering into City Hall in New Haven, right, with the same getup on and everything like that, I don't think he would have got a custodial sentence. I don't think he would have been locked up at all. But those weren't the facts. So I think that the lawyer, I think the lawyer probably got the best possible sentence available. Yeah.
Paula, you have a question.
Do you want me to untoggle my video or no?
Oh yeah, sure. I thought you had it off. Go ahead.
Maybe it'll work. Okay, there we go.
Hey, she exists again.
I got my computer to work. I just needed to update it. So I was wondering how you have been navigating saying what you know is true, at least on social media, because I've seen people who are very intelligent and have had jobs as high as AUSA say things that I know as a 1L who's been in criminal law for 2 months to be patently false for like political clout. And it's very strange to watch intelligent people say false things. So I was wondering how you navigate that.
Yeah, some people I used to work with.
Paula like encounters the real world. Like,
crazy.
I mean, it's crazy. Like I understand people will say things, but like I didn't imagine someone.
Jonathan Turley is a tenured professor.
Tenure sounds so awesome. I just like, I don't know, maybe like I just think tenure is so cool. But just being insulated from the consequences of it's amazing. Anyway, the I guess
stop talking, Mike. Just like
oh yes, right. That's a good point. You're right. No, but I think you have to sort of like you got to know in your heart, when you're saying something that's inherently like political, right? You have to be mindful of what your personal biases are and everything like that. But like my whole voice has not been one of frankly, I'm pretty politically agnostic. Most of my perspective has really just been loyalty to the profession of criminal defense. And most of this comes from, I spoke to the former Chief Justice of the Massachusetts Supreme Court, like the day I became a lawyer. And this was like, a bunch of years ago. I'm at an event, I'm meeting my first, like very senior lawyer. She's there to talk about the first gay marriage ruling in the United States, right? So it's a group of people that are very committed to equity and like justice. And we're all celebrating her because she authored the first opinion sort of legalizing gay marriage in Massachusetts, right? And she made an important point. She said, there's a lot of young lawyers out here. And I just want to say something. If you're not willing to represent whoever the most hated person in America is, you should seriously give thought to a different profession. Yeah, that was the first thing she said. And what she was talking about was she was passing along wisdom that she got back defending the Black Panthers, right? And that was a very different time. And I think we would all agree that people that were making meritorious political statements, sometimes that escalated beyond peaceful activity, got a valid defense from vigorous counsel, and that was a net benefit. And so I've just carried that with me. I've just used that as my lodestar. And so I'm just committed to the criminal defense profession. And I believe in all of its ugliness. And I believe that all of the best Supreme Court cases in criminal procedure were made, generally speaking, with people that you might not want to have come spend a night at your house, right? Like, and so I just think there's a lot of ugliness in the profession. I embrace the ugliness, but as long as you're committed to a principle and not a party, I think you're doing okay.
I thought that like a little bit Paula's question was much more like people are not always intellectually honest, that you know to be very smart.
Oh, yeah.
They are nonetheless not intellectually honest. And that doesn't just extend to the principles of going out of your way to represent someone. I mean, like it's a lot lower bar, frankly, to like.
But I think that's politics, right? I mean, isn't it politics? Maybe it's not.
No, it
Maybe
is.
it's
and
a
I think
different
that's
bias, Yeah.
But that's what I wanted to answer Paula's question with, which is like, it's just, yeah.
Do you mind if I like add on to that? I guess like
I have
also
a
like
different
how to
answer to
deal
Paula's
with that
question,
kind
but
of.
I'll wait.
I guess how to deal with that kind of lawyer, because it was just so stark to me to see someone who's had such an important position in their career to like, I'm a 1L and I know what they're saying is patently false. And it's just so strange. Like, I don't know how I confront someone, if I ever have to, in a courtroom with those types of ethics. Because, like, I don't want to say it makes me pessimistic or nihilistic, but it's not comforting.
I think it goes back to this. I'm like jumped on here because we're talking about the Rittenhouse case. I think it's actually an example of what the prosecutors did wrong. Like, if I was advising the prosecutors on how they should have tried this case, they got strident and they got out over their skis, and the defense, like in wrestling, like you learn how to use somebody else's weight against them, like when they're throwing their weight at you. That's what a prosecutor should have. The defense did that to them, but they should have been able to be more disappointed and more sober and more, just sort of straight. But instead they got flamboyant a little bit, and I think that hurt them. To answer your question, how do you deal with somebody like that in practice? You get disappointed with the fact that what they're doing is obviously misdirection or not intellectually honest. And honestly, when I see opposing counsel lie to a jury, or when I see opposing counsel make a disingenuous argument to a judge, I generally use physical expression, not to roll my eyes, but I will take a moment and I will show the court my just disappointment that I have to respond to something because it's not intellectually honest. You have to trust that a lot of, like, especially district court judges, they're very smart people, and they're going to see when something's not intellectually honest. But the point is not to rise to that level. Don't meet histrionics with histrionics. You just have to let them embarrass themselves and then give the straight facts. So it happens all the time, though. It happens all the time. So Ben had a different answer.
I want to give a slightly different answer, which is you're assuming that these people are very smart and being dishonest. And the dirty little secret is that some of them aren't that smart. And that you're imputing intelligence and cleverness to having held certain positions.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
And I think as a general matter, the average AUSA has probably a few IQ points on the average American, but not that many. And by the way, there's the bell curve is such that the low end of the AUSA bell curve gets pretty low. There are some pretty stupid people who've had some pretty impressive positions. Need I remind you that the acting attorney general for a number of months in the Trump administration was Matthew Whitaker, not a bright man. And so I do think the tendency to, there are even some law professors that aren't that bright, although none at the University of Michigan. Don't assume that the explanation is dishonesty rather than, that some people just aren't that bright.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
There's also a different quality and expertise within judges themselves too. Yep. So, I mean, that's also something you have to, I guess, account for.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, like the one thing you have to remember is, like, people say, oh, this judge is like going off the rails. Like, your job as an advocate, your job as counsel is to recognize that, like, you're not there like to show fealty to a judge. Like, there are some times when you actually have to make the judge feel a little bit of pain. If you're really prepared and you're going in and you're representing a client and they're doing something improper, your job is to be prepared enough to make the judge feel the pain that what they're doing is improper. And it's not like saying, I'm going to appeal you and you're going to get reversed. It's letting them see that coming down the road. Making the record. If the judge doesn't want to let you make the record, you say, I'm sorry, judge. I need to make a record on this. I apologize. This fundamentally violates this principle for XYZ reason. And so, yeah, it happens with judges too. But really, we're all just parts of this like system. And so, yeah, you have to make sometimes you make your opponent feel pain, but sometimes you have to say, judge, look, if you countenance this, or if you tolerate this, you're permitting a violation of the Fifth Amendment, or you're permitting a violation of the Sixth Amendment. You got to be prepared for that. You don't just wave your arms and get mad. So.
Yeah. I agree with everything that's been said here. Especially, Ben, you made a really good point that there's not necessarily like these are. Also, I'll make one last point, which is that the forum is different. It is, you say one thing in front of a judge, and you would say another thing in front of like GOP constituency. Like
or
there's
Twitter,
kind of, or
right,
Twitter.
yeah.
Well, right, but like that is the same thing for like a lot of
Wait
people.
a minute.
So like that's
I always share the beast of the day with federal judges.
yes.
You know, and
You share it with more federal judges than you know, because I will tell you, there was a long time before I started coming on in lieu of fun, and before I did a podcast with Ben, what was it, 30, 40 years ago? I can't remember. It was a long time. I was down in DC
40 years ago.
Long time ago. And we, like, before all that, I had like 400 followers on Twitter or less, like maybe like 300 followers. And 2 of them were my dad because he forgot his password. And so like, there was a long time when I knew like every follower that I had on Twitter, except I thought I did. And I was talking to a federal district court judge and they're like, oh, I follow you on Twitter. And I was like, oh, you follow Crime and Day? And they're like, no, I follow you like personally on Twitter. I like your stuff. And I said, but you don't have they all have burner accounts. So like you think you're tweeting to a ton of district court judges who have these burner accounts. They're watching everything you say. So
it's almost like the internet is mostly full of dogs. Yes, Ben, exactly. Ben putting truth to that statement. I guess this week seemed to be like a huge criminal defense week for whatever reason.
Yeah.
There was another really controversial sentencing that happened up in Niagara County, near where I'm from in Rochester. I don't know if you saw this, but it was a kid who was, well, he's not a kid. He was he was tried as an adult, or he pled as an adult, and I put a link to it in the thing, but it was this guy, Christopher Belter, who raped 4 girls when he was 16 and they were 16. And like, I actually went back through and kind of like looked up the victim statements, and they were pretty gruesome. And like everything, like this did not seem like something that and he pled guilty.
Yeah.
The judge sentenced him to probation.
Yeah.
Off of a minimum of 8. And I'm just kind of like, there have been like, I don't know, there just seems to be a lot of, I'm just kind of like a little agog.
Yeah, you have those. You definitely have those. And like the one thing that that should hearten people. I mean, if there's anything that can be heartened when there's like somebody's really victimized or multiple people are victimized and the justice system just is capable, but then doesn't, mete out justice. When that does happen, I will say it is not like precedential in almost any way, shape, or form. Like if I had that same client and I went before a different judge and I said, well, judge, look what happened here. They may say, I can't believe you're even bringing that case up. And in fact, it's going to motivate me to maybe sentence your client a little bit stiffer, because part of my job is to send a deterrent effect. And I don't think that the current recent rulings have sent a deterrent effect. So I will say that these outlier rulings, they do get a lot of attention, and they probably should. I don't know all the circumstances of that case. It was a state court case, right? It was not a federal case. It was a state court
It wasn't even state. It was county.
County.
Like,
and
so
it's an elected judge.
Yeah, it's an elected judge.
Yeah,
he's in retirement too. He's 70. He's retiring in 2 months.
See, I have the benefit of living in a state where our judges are not elected. I mean, these judges are appointed by the governor, and they have to be defensible positions, right? And they get up for re-review, and sometimes they get removed from the bench, because people have an opportunity to comment to the legislature and say, you cannot let this.
Why is an opportunity to comment to the legislature different than re-removal on election? It's like removal through election.
Yeah, it is, except if more than 50% of the people who pay no attention to anything vote for that person again, you don't have an audience with people who may have been attorneys. You don't have an audience, at least with the legislature. And granted, sometimes there's some outliers, but at least with the state legislatures in general, I have found those people to like care about like doing the right thing, a lot of them. And so if you're making them publicly defend the judge who's done blatantly improper things, they're much more likely to listen to you than like 50 to 60% of the people who like simply won't. They don't pay attention. They'll vote for somebody because of the letter next to their name, or because what their sign looked like, or because some bulletin they read in the local paper. So I think elected judges are a real problem. I do not think judges should ever be elected. I think it's a terrible thing. So I think this is probably an example of that. Maybe this judge was elected, maybe not. But yeah, I will just say, I'll be the
elected.
first to admit. Yeah, so there you go. So I will just tell you, I think at the end of the day, the justice system oftentimes is capable of providing justice and just fails to. And though I think that's the worst turn of events that there is.
Yeah, it did have overtones of Brock Turner, and it's hard not. I mean, there are only like so there's only like there's small data points, but it is just like is a very weird, two high-profile cases in which there is kind of a chance to kind of set a deterrent effect through this type of thing, and both times they're not. Like that actually seems like a pretty clear signal to the opposite, which is pretty distressing. But yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, it's also kind of like this is just the nature of this type of stuff.
It also kind of, I mean, at least for me, it footstops the point that things are very political, even when they're not intended to be. So if you think about the Me Too movement and you think about all the attention that was paid to crimes, sexual misconduct and sexual crimes, and that if this kid had been sentenced during that time, the amount of attention would be completely different. The
but Brock Turner was sentenced during that time. Like that was actually during that exact time, and he still got off. So I don't really think that the public, and that is exactly what judges are supposed to be insulated against, is that type of like, is that kind of like public pressure or like the public. So like,
but don't you think that the public pressure in those circumstances can sometimes at least provide guideposts to where the system itself requires of like a fix? Because I think that's one of the things that at least from the little I saw about the different cases we're discussing here, there was commentary on the system as a whole, but a lot of that was just a dislike of the procedure and where the system was actually working the way it was supposed to. And then you have other examples of where the system kind of allows for a miscarriage of justice rather than providing an ample defense to all parties.
But that's how you get mandatory minimums. That's how you get draconian sentencing regimes. And so that's very important to avoid that instinct. And I worry about that in a case like a Rittenhouse or something like that, right? Is that you get an outsized reaction to a verdict, a singular verdict with a singular defendant, when you've got tens of thousands of people going through the criminal justice system every year. And then what you end up having is legislators that want to pass a law with somebody's name attached to it, and they put some draconian mandatory minimum sentence, and it takes you decades. It'll take you decades to undo that damage. So I think that's it's important to resist that instinct. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so you have the risk on the one hand of sort of flamboyantly unreasonable sentences and verdicts in the lax direction, a la what Kate is describing, that affect small numbers of extremely high profile cases. And then the reaction to them risks, kind of Eisenhower.
No, it's over.
Drug
It's
law.
true. Like it's anecdotal, and you don't want to over extrapolate from a couple of data points. And to Mike's greater, to like probably the frustrating part is that like the people who I think that like a lot of the people who call for criminal justice reform and lower mandatory minimums or non-existence of mandatory minimums or like less jail time overall for people are some of the people who would call for would call for criminal justice reform in this area following a decision this.
I want very relaxed sentencing rules in general, except for the people I hate most, where I want draconian sentences that will satisfy my bloodlust. And I don't see what's unreasonable about that, actually. I have two questions for you, Mike, channeling people in the Ask a Question box, which is how somewhere between annoyed or outraged should we be by the conduct of the judge in the case? He seemed, in the Rittenhouse case, he seemed to lay his political cards on the table pretty early on. He refused to let the people who were shot to death be called victims, but insisted that they be called rioters or anarchists or arsonists. Was this somebody who was zealous to protect the rights of a criminal defendant, or was this somebody who was basically showing substantive sympathy?
I'm not going to become popular. I'm about to become very unpopular here.
Good.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah,
Mike. We're here to grease the road to unpopularity for you.
Look, after years and years and years of being representing criminal defendants and being in positions where I was denied an opportunity to make a defense effectively, right? Watching judges who would not grant a defense motion would effectively say, we don't do that. Oh, I saw you filed a motion for whatever. Yeah, we don't do that. Or it's denied, or I'll take it under advisement forever, or various really meritorious issues. And there was a presumption against merit in anything a criminal defense lawyer did. I don't know what this judge's history is. And I don't know if this is like, he's just, he treats certain kinds of defendants really, really, really poorly and others really, really well. I don't know. But I will tell you, in the four corners of this trial, which I watched every square inch of this trial, I felt that what this judge did was actually allow both parties to put on the case that they intended to put on and let the jury decide.
You don't have a problem with the judge's conduct?
I don't, and I will tell you on the victim, there were a couple of things that I thought were not great. Like, if I'm this judge, he has no need to be commenting on what the media is saying about what's happening in his courtroom, make comments about, Tubin is saying X about me. Just don't talk about it, right? I think that in sort of optics for a judge should not be done. I think that that's weird, and it shows a little too much self-awareness and ego, which
and
I think
a little
is a problem.
Too much self-consciousness of your public presentation. He's watching people watch him on the media, and he's upset at the mean things they're saying about him.
Yeah, but I thought he entertained defense motions that could be summarily denied in many, many, many cases. And I'll just tell you, I think it's a net good thing for defendants in this district. Because if I'm a defense lawyer in there and I now want to make a motion that a person in a case should not be prejudicially referred to as a victim in a case, when that's the ultimate issue in the case. The ultimate issue in the case is a person a victim of a crime? That they should not be referred to those terms. In this case, agree with it, disagree with it, ultimately, whether they're victims or not. But if I'm a lawyer and I'm in another case going forward in this district, it's a good thing because I'll be able to say, Judge, in Judge Schrader's case, we filed a motion that this person should not be at the outset of the case referred to as a victim because it bears on the ultimate issue in the case. And so you should grant it too. There's precedent in this jurisdiction for that motion to be granted. So I think that that's a net good thing. Now, there's a flip side to that. Should they be referred to as arsonists and looters and other terms that are arguably prejudicial? That's incumbent on the prosecutor to make a better case for why they shouldn't be. But remember one thing.
Why should you presume that the relevant issue in this case is, were they attacking him in a fashion that justifies him shooting them? It's not whether previously they were engaged in arson or looting or rioting. It's, were they presenting a threat such that justifies the use of lethal force?
Except that the context in this particular trial in which it was allowed, in which it was permitted, the four corners in which it was permitted, was going to be, can Rittenhouse tee up evidence that he perceived them as criminals engaged in criminal activity? Now, like it or don't like it, a criminal trial, in its purest sense, is to determine the mens rea and actus reus, the criminal conduct, purportedly criminal conduct of the defendant. We're actually not litigating, as much as it might pain people. We're not in a civil context where somebody's seeking damages. We're not litigating victims. We aren't. We're seeking to establish if somebody's been the victim of a crime. But sentencing is where you start to talk about the gravity of their victimization, the impact on them. But we have the presumption of innocence. We have the rule of lenity. All of these things are things that I desperately do not want to see vanish because we're unhappy with a verdict in a case. And so in this case, I think Judge Schrader's rulings, as flamboyant as he was and as improper as some of, as egotistical as some of the comments in the voids between evidence might have been, I think ultimately there was coherence to these rulings. And they happened to favor the defense in some cases. But there were plenty of things that he allowed the prosecutors to do in the interest of letting both sides put on their cases. So I'm not as outraged.
Okay, so
yeah, I'm not.
So John Bordeaux asks a related question, which is, Jerry Nadler says he wants to see federal review of this. I assume that means for possible federal civil rights prosecution.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I don't see how that happens here. There's no evidence that he killed these people because they were white.
Yep.
And there's while there is a crossing state lines with a firearm charge, I'm not sure that would normally merit federal involvement. Do you see any prospect? I don't see any prospect of a federal prosecution here. Do you?
I don't. There also shouldn't be. I mean, just because they're separate sovereigns and the double jeopardy doesn't apply to separate sovereigns, so that there can be a federal prosecution and a state prosecution essentially out of the same transaction, that shocks a lot of people. They say, oh, double jeopardy, he's been tried and acquitted. But actually separate sovereigns, the federal government and the state government, can prosecute for the same thing effectively. There is another couple of charges that could exist. I mean, if somebody could make a case that he was a rioter, that he was attending a riot to do violence, right? That, which some have argued, they could make that argument. Even brandishing a firearm is considered an act of violence under federal law and an aggravating factor. There are defenses to that, right? If you're engaged in lawful carry,
but it's not an independent defense.
No, it's not. No, it's an aggravating factor in the other crime. So it would be an aggravating factor in connection with this other underlying conduct. To answer your fundamental question, I don't think there should be, and I don't think there will be. I think that a federal grand jury and a U.S. attorney would look at the elements and say, I am not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt we can win this one. And remember that they've just seen him acquitted with a sort of a full vetting of all of the facts. I think they'd be foolish to do.
I'm not even sure I know what he could be charged with.
Yeah. Federally. Well, again, it would be participating in. Yeah.
If the dead people were of a different race, and it was perceived as racial violence, then you have a question about was it is there a potential civil rights
right
kind of Klan Act case,
right?
But you have this seems like there's no such thing as a garden variety murder, but it's kind of a garden variety murder with the caveat of exactly the type that the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction over.
Yeah.
With the caveat that it's national news.
It's a state crime. Period. Full stop. It's a state crime. And the fact that the idea of a politician weighing in to say, let's now use the DOJ as for a second crack at it, I think, look, if you countenance that kind of behavior because you like the results in this case, I'm just telling you the capacity for that to be used in atrocious ways in the future, to have that boomerang in really terrible instances is high. I would not encourage that kind of prosecution at all. Yeah. Absolutely.
Is there, what do you think? Do you think that, Mike left. Did that just happen?
Yeah.
Okay. Ben, you're muted.
Oh, well, he's still here, but muted.
Yes.
And
he lost Mike. Maybe he's crossed state lines looking for trouble. I think Mike crosses state lines looking for trouble a lot, I think.
I do think that there is, I don't know, it's been a weird period of kind of having a lot of these cases. I don't know, there's been like a lot of flashpoints, and I didn't watch any of the Rittenhouse trial, so I really appreciate Mike watching a lot of it and kind of lending his expertise. I don't know. I do have to say that this is like, man, it is a, I don't know. I don't know what the impact of this is going to be. Like, I don't know if it is going to, what would you say, Ben? Like, do you think that there was any long-term, like, reaction or kind of, what was like the long-term impact of like the OJ verdict? Like, and him like, and something like that, like a moment where people watched it or observed it or saw stuff or like, I don't know.
I don't think OJ is a good comparison to this because OJ was fundamentally a celebrity case. And, you know, like, there was no larger social importance of the OJ case. It was just, you know, celebrity, former football player accused of killing beautiful wife and beautiful ex-wife's boyfriend, cop, racist. Fun was had by all in watching it. And this is a very different matter, because this is actually a outgrowth of organic expression of across the country of rage and anger at you know, shootings of black men and some black women as well. It was a response to police violence, and in that context, this kid does this horrible thing, and I think there is a deeper meaning of the in this case, whatever it is, and I think people are interested in it not because Kyle Rittenhouse is a celebrity, but because people want to impute meaning to that, whatever it is. And of course, that's exactly what a criminal case is not for, which goes back to Mike's original point. And it's perfectly possible that Kyle Rittenhouse went there for all the wrong reasons, armed, and some guys attacked him and he acted in self-defense, right? I mean, that is actually a possible thing. I don't personally believe that, but that is what the jury appears to have believed. And so I think that's not like, OJ is less the template here than the spate of cases in the Black Lives Matter universe. The Chauvin case, the Chauvin case, you know, some of the cases that did not result in convictions, right? And this is part of a spree of cases that represent sort of our collective effort to come to an understanding of this stuff and impute responsibility to this stuff. And this is a weird one because it's kind of a collateral, you know, it's not a cop shooting an unarmed black person, right? It's not it's in response to police shooting demonstrations, a kid shoots some demonstrators who may have been arsonists or whatever, and may have attacked him. And that's so it's this sort of collateral offshoot of the sort of Black Lives Matter stuff. And it's taken on a great deal of meaning, both because Kyle Rittenhouse represents to the left the ultimate sort of example of the unaccountable white kid with a gun, and represents to the right the sort of heroic, inexplicably, which is my joke at the beginning of the show, the heroic, you know, upstanding white man with a gun willing to protect himself against the anarchists. And you know, I think the case doesn't stand for any of that on either, right? It stands for the best the Kenosha, Wisconsin justice system could produce at a particular moment in time in the way of justice under Wisconsin law before 12 jurors. So I mean, I think like we try to make these cases stand for more than they're able to hold.
Mike?
You are muted, Mr. Chase.
Oh, you can't. Mike, you have to go back. You have to refresh yourself. Just refresh your... I'm going to take you out and bring you back in. There we go. There you go.
Got it. All right. Yeah, no, I think we should resist that urge, right? To make these cases about things that they're not about. You know, it's like the whole thing about like whenever like somebody's a political figure and like they don't, like they just get forced sort of into the the discussion, and now we make like Catholic prayer candles out of them, and like we like make everything bigger than it needs to be. It was like Mueller.
Hey, dude, are you talking about my Bob Mueller?
I am talking about Mueller a little bit because, like, then he like
because I have a Bob Mueller votive candle, and I am not apologizing.
All right, don't apologize, but I'm just saying I think that like you should resist. We should resist that urge because like life is like very varied and like it's imperfect and ugly and all this kind of stuff, and that happens in criminal courts all the time. It's just a lot of really like really like the small guy is going to get totally like steamrolled if the masses start to like force fundamental changes that like do away with justice. Like worry about the sentencing thing. I just like I'm not so sure that cameras in the courtroom were a great thing in this case necessarily, for a lot of reasons. Like I'm generally pretty pro cameras in the courtroom. I'm not sure it was great here. Do I have Christmas decorations up? Yes, I absolutely do. But no, I agree. I think we should resist the urge to make these things about more than they are.
Yeah.
We are going to leave it there. We're not going to ask Mike Chase what he is doing with Christmas decorations up before Thanksgiving. It's not. We're not going to press him on this. He's not gonna. We're also not gonna ask him whether he wears white after Labor Day. There's gonna be no bullying Mike Chase on these fronts. Mike Chase, you're a great American. You're a traitor to the country, but a friend of the show, like all good defense lawyers should be.
Jesus.
We will not be back on Monday because apparently we're taking the week off. We will, however, if you have ideas for Pugilism Week, like a prosecutor who Mike Chase should duke it out with. Oh, wait, it's Cheese Night, Mike, and you haven't made a single cheese crime joke. So, on you.
It's a federal crime to sell overly moist Gouda. So check the moisture of your Gouda.
Right.
Yes.
Dry Gouda.
Oh, my God.
All right.
I love that you have that.
If you have overly moist... If you have overly moist Gouda, don't
see your
sell
doctor.
it.
See
Give
your
it
primary
away
care
for
physician.
free. We will be back hundreds and hundreds of hours from now. It'll be Pugilism Week. Tweet your pugilism ideas at Kate. Don't tweet them at me. And we will see you then. Have a great Thanksgiving. And until then, Genevieve.
We don't have fun anymore, but in lieu of fun, we have Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving.
Cheerio.
Oh my God. Bye.